On this episode of Purposely Curious, we look into one of America's most infamous unsolved murder mysteries, the Black Dahlia. Born Elizabeth Short, she is someone whose case continues to intrigue generation after generation. We discuss certain aspects of this case and its impact on American culture and theories talked about throughout the years. Sadly, this case was never solved, so I'm sure this will not be the last you hear of it. So join us and get nice and cozy as this episode starts now. Hello, Leonie.
Greetings, Mary. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing well, thank you. How's everything going in your life?
Everything is going good. I'm busy working out, doing my stuff, the usual. And I have been interviewing people, as you noticed. So I know people have been wondering about Leonie, but he's still here giving us some of his time from his busy schedule. So thank you, Leonie.
No, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here talking with you.
Yeah. So what's new with you, Leonie? So, because everyone's missed you, I'm sure. So please fill us in.
It's two people that listen in the UK. Sure.
Oh.
Well, me and Ted Lasso have been hanging out a little bit.
Oh my God. I love him. I love him.
No, it's been busy over here. It's been busy. It's just, it's just a lot of work on my other podcast that I work on, and just, a couple business things and looking at houses and stuff. It's just been pretty busy, but can't complain. Keeping busy is good. The time passes and new ideas come up, and, you meet new people and you have new meetings and new friendships, and just, it's like life's like, they show you what spring looks like when a flower comes out of the ground, in those slow motions, it feels like after this pandemic, like the flowers are coming out of the ground again, like life is,
I agree. Yeah.
life is starting to bloom again,
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like having more of an appreciation for life
Right.
after 2020.
Right.
I know I do.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. Definitely.
I do too.
Yeah, so I'm definitely excited. Summer starts in a few weeks.
Yes.
Like on the 20th, right? The 20th. Is that the summer solstice, or is it the 22nd?
It's like the 22nd, I believe. But yeah, or as you call it, 78-degree weather.
Oh, yes.
While the rest of us have 105.
Oh my God, I know. I didn't realize when you said that you were referring to the change in the weather.
Right.
Yeah, I actually I had gone to Colorado like 2 weeks ago.
Nice.
And when I flew back, I was like, because I flew back early Sunday morning, I was like, I felt like very energetic and very inspired by Colorado because I really fell in love with it.
Right.
So I'm going to go back because it was such a short trip. But I was like, I'm going to go to the beach and like ride a bike, and my girlfriend went with me. And I let my pale legs out, and it was so nice. And I was like, oh, I can't wait, because the summer is going to be, for me, it's going to be a time of exploration and just, I just love this year so far. So I'm excited for the summer.
Nice.
Yeah. So how about yourself? Any crazy plans that you might be planning for the summer?
Yeah. The crazy thing is, like, there's a lot of interesting things that are starting to surface, and I don't know, like, if you ask me like a month from now, 2 months from now, where I'm going to be, I couldn't even tell you. Like, I couldn't even tell you where I'm going to be or what I'm going to be doing. So that's where I'm like, well, that's a good sign, I guess, because there's a lot to consider, but definitely we'll be here in the Southland in LA somewhere, enjoying summer, because I love the heat, not because it's like you're trapped indoors in the heat, sweating. Like, no, I like it because it's like, it's getting out there. It's barbecue season, pool season, it's hanging out with friends, and I think all that's starting to come back now. So it's, something to look forward to,
Yeah. So to summer, I guess we'll get excited and shoot some summer episodes.
Yeah, definitely.
Summertime.
It's gonna be hot and steamy.
Okay.
Like my showers.
But yes, on this episode, I wanted to talk about the Black Dahlia. Have
Yeah.
you heard of the? I'm sure you have, but have you heard of the Black Dahlia, Leonie?
Yes.
So, the Black Dahlia is one of the oldest cold cases in the United States, and one of the most famous cold cases that is based off or happened here in the Los Angeles area.
Right.
When I mentioned this to Leonie, he was like, "Oh yes, Elizabeth Short." Like I didn't even realize her name.
Right.
And I was confusing her because then I was like, no, Leonie, the Black Dahlia. Like I was confusing her with another victim of a crime in recent times with a similar name. So Leonie taught me a thing or two, and this is before I started doing my research, guys. So I just thought I'd share that. I had no idea. I knew her as Black Dahlia, and that was it. My first, I guess the first time I ever kind of heard about the Black Dahlia is I had taken a tour of the Broadway corridor in downtown LA by the LA Conservancy organization. And I think at the time it was like $10.
Right.
And they were taking us through the Broadway corridor, telling us the history. And then somehow we ended up at the Biltmore Hotel.
Yes.
And they had mentioned her as far as, but I didn't really understand how much history this person had with the city and how it's attached. There have been movies made based off the Black Dahlia.
Right.
Apparently there's video games. There's endless newspaper articles. Now there's podcasts. I was watching YouTube videos. There's so many different takes.
Right.
And I just didn't realize what a big following this cold case has. So yes, what do you know? Let's say, just off the top of your head about the Black Dahlia?
I remember, when I first heard of her because I became fascinated with true crime, years ago, right? And there was this one guy, his name was Ouija. Do you remember? I think I might have mentioned him before on your show. Ouija, Weegee. Did you ever know you ever hear that name?
I don't know.
So he was a crime scene photographer. Ouija's not his real name. That's what the media would call him, Ouija, like Ouija board, right? If you play with the Ouija board, you can hear about your future, right? So this crime scene photographer's name was Ouija. I saw his crime scene photos, okay, at an exhibit that featured the Sharon Tate, Charles Manson murders, and then in the back, it was this other really, really dark photographer that does really weird stuff. And then they had some Ouija photos. And I'm like, who's Ouija? And I looked into it. They called him Ouija because he was always the first person on scene. So his crime scene photos, he would take the photos and then the police would arrive, And he got that nickname because people were like, oh, he could read minds. He knows where to go next, But he was not a murderer or nothing. It was just he got tipped off, Like I don't know if he paid people or what the story was, but he was always there. So anyways, the story pops up of the Black Dahlia and I'm like, what is this? And then I saw the photos and I'm like, whoa, that's really crazy, because I saw the crime scene photos, mind you, this is dated back in 1947 and they're really gruesome because they almost look fake, When you look into the details as to why they look fake, it'll make more sense. And I was like, this is creepy, And then I started looking into the story.
So he took the pictures of the Black Dahlia's body? Or was it the detectives?
No, I believe...
Or he was just mentioned?
He was just mentioned because he did a lot of true crime. Like, I'm pretty sure that it was not Black Dahlia that he photographed. There were many others he did, but there was a connection because there was this like, who found her body, And I believe it was the detectives, and somehow the photos got leaked or released back in the day. But you've seen the photos, right?
I have, yeah.
They look fake, right? I mean,
yeah.
It almost looks like, as described, like somebody was posing her like a mannequin,
Yeah.
So
yeah. So If you guys haven't seen the pictures of the Black Dahlia, you don't have to, but for all our true crime people, she was cut in half. There was also, pieces of her thigh that were removed. They had cuts. She had cuts to her lips on both sides, like to her cheeks. It was pretty gruesome. She was found in the Lamar Park area. Now it's called the Lamar Park area, but it wasn't then, I don't think. By a woman who apparently, had seen what, like you said, what looked like a mannequin
Right.
on the grass. And when she got closer, she realized that it was not a mannequin, but indeed a body that had been cut into. Which is terrible. I don't know. I mean, have we seen stuff like that in LA since? Like bodies cut in half?
I'm sure. Yeah, I mean, there have been mutilations and stuff over the years. A lot of stuff that doesn't make the news and stuff. But I can't remember where these killings were. But there were some definitely probably in the 60s and 70s. Cases like this that were unsolved, or maybe were just attributed to like, oh, wild animal or something, and then it's like, well, it's it doesn't look like that. I remember for a while up here in Griffith Park, not too far from where I live, like they were finding severed heads, and there were, because
Wow.
it's a big place. I mean, it's a popular place where people go hiking, people go to Runyon Canyon, or they go Griffith Park, and they were saying, hey, don't go alone anymore. It's not safe. Take a friend. This was not that long ago either. It might have been like within 10-15 years, where this was happening, and I was just like, that's crazy. Like who's taking about, but that was happening. So I guess it does happen from time to time. But I was thinking of what you were saying, describing the Black Dahlia, and aside from her being severed in half, like almost a clean cut in her waist, right? Her The cuts she had in her mouth, I guess they nicknamed those the Glasgow smile, where they cut from your lips all the way to your ears almost. If you remember Heath Ledger, that was the Joker from Batman, from The Dark Knight.
Yeah.
Because he had those scars, and he was always making up a story. I got these scars. He was always telling somebody, But that's kind of what she looked like, the Black Dahlia. She had those scars, And aside from being ripped in half, literally, and then the weird thing is, her intestines were removed, and there was no blood at the scene where her body was found. So
She was dumped there.
she was dumped, but not just dumped, but strategically
Placed.
placed and posed, which is really gruesome.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of sad. Obviously, so the lady who found her, her name was Betty Bersinger. She found the body on Norton Avenue in South LA. So, some people actually drive to that scene,
Right.
And kind of because the address isn't on that street,
Right.
to be like, this is where they found the body. But it doesn't look like it did back then, which was a lot of fields. Now they have like cement, you have like your front lawn, but
Right.
most of everything is cemented now. So she was found in Los Angeles, South LA. She said again, she just looked really white. And if you guys look at pictures of the Black Dahlia, she looked very, very pale with dark hair. So that's why she thought it was a mannequin, obviously. Right. And when you die, your color does change. To kind of like a more lighter, you don't have like that pinkish, warm tones anymore.
Right.
And so depending on how long she had been there, she had lost that. So she was already white to begin with. She
Right.
was going to look white and shiny, which would give you that look of not being of being a mannequin.
Right.
So obviously the detectives came out here, and, obviously pictures like that would not be released now. But again, this is a time where things maybe weren't so regulated, how they are now. So obviously the pictures were leaked, even though they tried to cover the body, but like Leone said. The police then had they basically had to be like, oh my God, like she had no blood. There was no blood on the grass, nothing.
Right.
You know, she's, you know, cut in half and apparently cut in a type of surgical way. And then there's just some random cuts on her thigh, you know, where a piece of her skin was missing here. And then, the cuts on her face. So she was obviously tortured. We don't know, of course, if that was done after she died or while she was alive. And then she apparently had like bruising to her ankles and both her wrists, which is where maybe she was held. And that's where people think maybe she was tortured.
Yeah.
But it's unfortunate. Now, throughout the years, the more I was reading into who Elizabeth Short was, I was able to look into the fact, I guess, back then, media outlets would, to, I guess, sell more papers, would kind of give each victim or each crime or something, they would get names to them so that's how you would follow the story, right? And then
Right.
so one of the publications, which apparently was like the trash, quote unquote trash publication at the time, gave her the Black Dahlia, and it kind of just stuck, and now it's part of like history, true crime of America, right? I mean, Hollywood movies.
Yeah.
But,
There's a
yeah.
fun fact about that. Do you know?
Yeah.
Do you know what they nicknamed her murder before Black Dahlia?
No.
So Black Dahlia, because she wore black, she had black hair, right? She had wore black flowers and dressed in tight black clothing. But before that, the media referred to the case as the werewolf murder.
Really? I had no
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah, because of how the body was mutilated, the newspapers, were calling it the werewolf murder until, like you said, that one, news outlet, magazine, paper, started calling her the Black Dahlia because of how she dressed.
Mm-hmm. Huh. I didn't know that. The werewolf. Oh,
Yeah, it's crazy.
I hadn't read that. Yeah, which makes total sense, right? Like you would think that an animal would
Right.
do something like that.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when I started looking into this, there obviously was a lot of suspects. So the detectives had a lot to do on their hands. One, just by the way this murder was done, right?
Mm-hmm.
How her body was placed, which means someone brought her there. So that person may not be from the neighborhood, right? And so looking into who she was, it's just unfortunate because it sounds like she's also been trashed in the media even now, where they're trying to paint her as, like a prostitute, right, or living off of old men, what is the truth or not, we don't know, obviously, but there was a lot of people who were saying that, they try to vilify her,
right,
as a victim, which sometimes we see that now, right?
Definitely, yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So I just thought that was interesting to see it with more modern eyes. And so where people are saying, she was vilified, and I saw interviews of like distant family. Obviously, she died so long ago, no one really knew her, or they're not alive, or they're really elderly now.
Right.
But they brought up the point that she was none of that, and she was young. How many of us date different people, right?
Right.
So instead of saying like, oh, this was her boyfriend at this age, this was her boyfriend at that age, it was like she was taking advantage of him. And like, so how much of that is the media, the patriarchy, right? Trying to make the victim sound like she's not just a regular person who maybe just fell into the hands of a fucking murderer,
right.
I don't know. I'm going on a rant. I'm getting detoured here. I mean, I don't know. What do you have to say to that?
Yeah, right. It's interesting that there was a note there. Do you know where she was the night before? Supposedly the night before she was murdered.
Mm-hmm. Fill me in.
There was a note that people placed her at the Biltmore Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. You ever been to the Biltmore?
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful.
We had our prom there.
Oh,
high school
nice.
Prom.
Nice. Yeah. It's a beautiful, LA hotel in the heart of downtown LA. It's just it's so ornate, and it's been kept that way for many years. It's just a classy place, you know. So she was placed there the night before of her murder. But there's also a story that places her at the Cecil Hotel. And at the time, the Cecil Hotel, I mean, of course, we know that from the Alyssa Lamb story, the girl that was found in the water tank, and also the Richard Ramirez Night Stalker, staying there while he was committing murders. But see, going back to 1947, Cecil Hotel might have been a better place to stay. But it was definitely cheaper. It was definitely affordable. So back then, if you didn't have money, like that's where you would stay. So I don't know. I mean, her being an aspiring actress, right? And looking at the word aspiring means that she's not exactly an actress, yet.
Mm-hmm.
Wondering if she did not have money. And if she did stay at the Cecil, because the Biltmore, I think was always just a classy place and, upscale and probably pricey.
Mm-hmm.
So was she staying there with some gentleman, or tied to some man who was possibly married, having an affair, with a young girl. Or did she stay at the Cecil? So I always wondered, because I heard both stories. And the Cecil is a story that sticks because of all the darkness that surrounds the hotel, and you want to, tie it in easily to, the Black Dahlia, because, she stayed there and the next day she was found dead.
Yeah, I think the Biltmore has more weight on it because the Cecil only came into discussion in the last from what I was reading until recently.
Right.
So I would say, it's just my opinion. I'm not one of the detectives,
Right.
But I think it's just the lore of, people are going to the Cecil now. They don't, take pictures of the damn thing,
Right.
so I think people are just trying, like you said, tie it into it.
Right.
But the Biltmore, like I said, I took this tour when I was like, I don't know, it was like 15, 20 years ago. And that they were telling us that the Biltmore, at least the historians of the Los Angeles Conservancy, were saying that that's where she was last reported to be seen. She also did live in Hollywood, I was reading before all this, like kind of like a history from when she moved out here.
Right.
She also lived, and she had known addresses in Hollywood. So that's been verified. But then there goes the story of her living under, Florentine Gardens, the owner.
Right.
She apparently was living in one of his cottages, so there's that whole, she was using older men, like that whole history that supposedly was put out in the media. Whether that's true or not, we don't know, obviously, but
Right.
I just thought that was very interesting. Yeah. And again, they did come up with suspects, after doing kind of like their research. Some of them were found to, they had an alibi that checked out. Some of them, there was one who confessed to it, but then was found out that he actually had an alibi that he didn't want, basically, which was, they were able to verify that he wasn't in the area.
Right.
But the most famous suspect is Mr. Hodel. Am I saying it right, Hodel?
Yes.
So he was a surgeon that apparently worked in like an STD, venereal disease clinic in downtown LA. So the reason he was already a suspect, but then, was never really, I guess suspect is the wrong word. He was always a person of interest, but they never were able to tie him down. But he did a lot of shady shit that made it seem like he was a suspect. His son then wrote a book of how he felt that he was the suspect, and a lot of what the son said made total sense. I guess a lot of people believe he was the suspect, but then the son, started saying that he was also the Zodiac killer. So a lot of people started like, this guy's done that job now. Like,
Right. Right.
because his theory of him being the Black Dahlia murderer made a lot of sense to a lot of people, even detectives, and detectives, also did think he was a strong candidate at the time. But now, a long time has passed. And then when he started tying him to the Zodiac killer, people were like, maybe not, like he sounds like he likes the celebrity end of this whole thing, right? Or he's just, at this point, the son's just trying to find a reason why to tie him.
Right.
I don't know. But what do you know of George Hodel?
That's pretty much about it. What you summarized there, and I thought that's an interesting lead. I mean, I thought that the matching of the possible letters, the mysterious letters that the LAPD received, the LAPD received all these mysterious packages with letters that were cut off from newspapers that said, here are the Dahlia's belongings, letter to follow. And it contained her address book and some other small personal items, that kind of stuff. And soon, later, another letter would arrive where the suspect promised to turn himself in, but never did. So, they believe that after becoming, the detectives believe that after becoming convinced that he would not be identified, the killer might have taunted the police and newspapers with the knowledge he had that no one else did. So they believe that was a lead. And then, of course, the son of Hodel, basically said that, that it was his father, So there was that lead for a while. And I'm not sure,
Yeah.
like you said,
So,
he just wasn't found credible,
the son.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the father, George Hodel, was a suspect. And if we look into George Hodel, when he died, among some of his belongings, the son, whose name is Steve, who was a former homicide detective, found 2 pictures that were vintage, right? They were old pictures in his dad's belongings. So his dad was a doctor. His dad had money, right? He grew up with wealthy people. They had like this man club where men would come and, apparently had like sex parties. It came to be known after.
Right.
The police in the 40s thought that he was a suspect, so they even put tap wires in his home. And there was a lot of stuff that he found, I guess, they found that made him seem guilty, even though they couldn't tie him to the killing.
Right.
They were never able to find, that would be illegal now, because they did it with back then it was like, you can tap people's phones, without any kind of warrant or anything. You can't do that now.
Yeah.
So it was by illegal means, right? And apparently, he was a powerful man in the city of Los Angeles, George Hodel. He also, when I was looking into him, had been accused of raping his daughter. And this is Hodel, right?
Right.
So the children are basically growing up with this father who has parties, sex parties, rumors about him. Then he's being taken to court because he molested his daughter, and all the while he was also a suspect for the Elizabeth Short's murder. One of the suspects, but they never charged him with anything.
Right.
He was definitely acquitted, I think, of the crime of molesting his daughter. And he basically also was seen as a suspect for another suspicious death, and that was of his secretary, Ruth Spalding. And that was in 1945. So if you look at the history, like he's a shady guy.
Right.
Totally shady. And here comes this guy who, when he dies, his son, right, says, I found these pictures that look like the Black Dahlia. And if you look up the pictures, it's just of a woman who, it's hard to tell if it's her or not. I wasn't too convinced, but back then, having that hairstyle, right, The hairstyle, the red lipstick, it looks very, she can look very similar to her, but I don't think it's her just from me looking at it.
Right.
Looking at, but that's what made the son think that it was his father. And then now keep in mind, his secretary died, and so that he was looked as a suspicious person because her death was suspicious, but nothing came of it, right? Then, when the whole Black Dahlia thing happened, they were looking at him as well, right? And then the daughter molesting him. No, I'm sorry, not molesting him. Him molesting the daughter.
Right.
Sorry, the other way around.
Yeah.
So when the police, I guess, supposedly bugged his place, he said there's recordings where he said, they can't catch me. They won't know I'm guilty for it. Like certain things that implicated him, but it would never tie him to the Black Dahlia. He could have been talking about someone else if he was a murderer, right?
Right.
And then the weirdest thing is that he then decided to take off and he left to another country, and to me, who does that but a guilty man?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So the other thing too is that the police kind of like when they were investigating him in one of the recordings, he basically kind of said it sounded like he was going to pay off someone. Like he didn't know how much, like he paid someone off, so nothing's going to come of it. And then apparently in the timeline, like that week or the next week, the case was dropped. He was dropped as a suspect. So a lot of people suspect that what was on that evidence tape, right, which is illegal now, right, because it was not gotten by legal ways, could have been that the timeline was like, oh, he probably paid someone, because then why would the police department just drop him out? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
I don't know if you've read into any of that.
No, I've not gone into that angle of the investigation, but that's really interesting though.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know the crime? I'm sorry, continue.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna just say, do you know who the FBI crime profiler John Douglas is?
No.
He's the one who basically they created the Netflix show Mindhunter. He's a famous profiler. He's up there in age. I believe I'm pretty sure he's still alive. He's up there in age, but he profiled like all the big cases, like the John Wayne Gacy and Ted Bundy and Richard Ramirez. Like he interviewed these people in prison. Like it's pretty. His books are pretty crazy. Like they have some details that he released over the years that all these serial killers have in common. It's really, really fascinating. But about the Black Dahlia specifically, he John Douglas believed that the killer must have known Elizabeth well and had some emotional attachment to her. So this is his personal profile about the case. He says that the horrific violence inflicted upon the body and leaving the body on public display would indicate that the killer wanted the world to see Elizabeth Short and the wrongdoings that he believed she had done to him. He also describes the killer as a white male in his late 20s or older with a high school education. He lives alone, works with his hands, and is comfortable with knives and blood, possibly a butcher or slaughterhouse worker. Now, something he wrote about that caught my attention was he put her body on display to indicate, to show off the wrongdoings that he believed that she had done to him. And I took that as to think that if it was possible that perhaps she might have been caught with a married man, ruined that marriage, and that man killed her out of anger, and proceeded to leave the body the way it was, because there's a couple details that, obviously her body's mutilated, but there were specific stab wounds also to like her vaginal area, so that kind of like shows like anger, like making a point and showing off a naked body. Mind you, this is 1947. Okay. Like we see a naked body today, we're like, well, he or she was on drugs, but back then it was like, you don't see naked bodies, anywhere, because it was taboo, So the fact that they found her naked body, posed the way she was, with specific stab wounds to like the vaginal area. That kind of like shows anger. So that made me think what John Douglas wrote, if perhaps she was caught, with somebody in some lover's triangle or something, and then that person took it out on her, like to get rid of her or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's my theory,
Yeah.
But yeah, there's also, do you know about the Cleveland torso murders?
No.
So this was going on from 1934 1938, so about 10 years before the Black Dahlia. They were linking the murders to Black Dahlia because they were thinking it's the same person, because 13 victims were slaughtered. Okay, 13 from 1934 to 1938. All the bodies were decapitated with the finesse of a butcher, often leaving torsos in half, some drained of their blood. Several of the male victims were castrated, others were cleaned with a chemical solvent, and the killer was never caught. So when they found the Black Dahlia, they thought that it might have been the same person as well.
Yeah, I mean, I can see why.
Yeah,
I had never heard of that. So if that was kind of, if that was kind of fresh in people's minds, then
right.
I can see why they would think that. Yeah.
Or possibility that 10 years later, some demented person, I'm assuming it's a guy, comes up with the idea from reading about the Cleveland torso murders, comes of age in his early, 20s, whatever, like he says, could have been a butcher or somebody who's, comfortable with blood, comes up with the idea, hey, I want to do the same thing, and does it to her,
Mm-hmm.
like a copycat, murder.
Yeah. So it's kind of unfortunate that they never found who did it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, do you think if the murder had been done in modern times, they would have a different outcome?
Yeah. The murder today would be caught for sure, because there's, because of technology, because of not just DNA evidence, and we can, trace blood droplets and all that. We can look under fingernails, get that DNA. We can look at cameras are everywhere, and everybody today sees something somewhere, so it's not like you're going to casually drop off a body and take time to pose it, somebody's watching you,
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of that. I think that today that person would have been eventually captured for sure.
Yeah. Oh, it's just really sad to see that somebody, like I said, we don't know if she was tortured, but she obviously was mutilated and left, like you said, for people to see. She was driven there, because there was no blood there, and placed in broad daylight, in a neighborhood.
Yeah, that's just creepy. Like if I were to come across that today, that would give me nightmares forever.
Oh yeah.
And I've seen some crazy stuff. You see some crazy stuff, so it's like, but that would just stick with me forever. I'd be like, fuck,
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. I think it's unfortunate. Like I said, we'll never know, but definitely I feel like the Hodel, if you guys look into that, it's definitely more believable.
Right.
But like I said, a lot of people believe he is circumstantially there's a case against him, but the Sun wrote a book. It was very, it was successful, right? And then when he started tying him to other serial killers, I think people he lost credibility for some people.
Right.
I'm sure, there are people who follow him, but I feel like at that point people were like, okay, he's going a little out of hand now. Like,
Yeah.
kind of like people who say Ted Cruz is the Zodiac killer.
That's hilarious. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't get that, but yeah. Cause weren't the Zodiac killings, what was the time frame for the Zodiac killings?
I believe it was 1960s.
Yeah. He was like a child if he was born at, I don't know. Yeah. Or his dad is. Is it that his dad is the Zodiac
I think
killer?
he's his dad. His dad. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
That's funny.
Mm-hmm. So I think, it could be Hodel, Or it could be something like what you said, right? An affair gone wrong. Or it also could be, you never know. Maybe that it could be a killer who wants to be, who heard of the ones you just talked about. Was it Chicago?
Cleveland, yeah. Copycat,
Cleveland,
yeah.
yeah. Copycat. Or it could have been that person. We never know.
Yeah.
They were like, one more. Because there was no other killings that I know of that out here in LA that were like that.
Like that? No,
that I've heard
no.
of.
No, some weird stuff did surface, a couple like decades later, like I said in the 60s, 70s, but nothing continuously like that gruesome. No way, But on a side note, if you ever go to the Biltmore Hotel, do you know what you can get there?
No.
You can get the Black Dahlia cocktail.
Oh, and what is that?
It's vodka, Chambord, black raspberry liqueur, and Kahlua.
Oh.
Doesn't sound appetizing to me, but they serve it.
Yeah, I don't know if I would get it. It's kind of creepy.
It is creepy, yeah.
Yeah. I'm looking at the pictures of the Black Dahlia and the one that were found in the Hodel home. There's two pictures, but I think like maybe one could be her.
Right.
The other one, not so much, but maybe one. Like the nose kind of looks. Maybe.
Yeah. That's weird.
Yeah.
And did you ever hear about the lipstick murder?
No, I did not.
I think this might be the last thing the last connection that I know about this. There was a lipstick murder that was connected since a badly beaten female body was found with a bizarre message scrawled on the victim's stomach in red lipstick. It said, "Fuck you, BD." And they assumed that BD meant for Black Dahlia.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And the police, they also discovered another mutilated young woman near where Elizabeth Short's corpse was found. And again, neither of the cases were solved. So there was that.
Now, the mutilation, is it similar to the Black Dahlia or no?
It's not stated. So I wonder if they kept the details, under wraps for this one to not, to try to solve the case of the Black Dahlia, But it sounds like, something, it probably wasn't as badly mutilated, but it said it was a badly beaten female body. So.
So we could have had a serial killer.
Yeah, there's that possibility.
Potentially.
Right? There's that possibility for sure.
Especially if they were kind of in the same area.
Right. Yeah. Nearby. That's the crazy part.
Yeah. Oh, man. So, I don't know. This is kind of like a sad story. Like I said, it was gruesome. The pictures were leaked. Unfortunately, back then, it's not like now, right? But, there was a lot of suspects, but the Dr. Hodel was the one who worked at the STD clinic.
Right.
And also apparently had the means and the training to be able to cut a body. And at the same time had a shady history of being a suspicious person in his secretary's suspicious death, had been accused of molesting his own daughter, right?
Yeah.
And then somehow when they tapped into his home, said things that made him look guilty. He also had apparently when they looked in his home, he had secret rooms. So why would you have secret rooms? I don't know.
Right.
Other than they're cool for some stuff, but everything about him sounded like shady.
Yeah.
And, he took off from the US. It was only until the last few years of his life that he returned. So to me, he's definitely guilty of something, whether it's the Black Dahlia or something else, but he definitely took off and ran. So
right.
he's guilty in my eyes. It's just, I don't know if he is the suspect, but if you guys look into the timeline and what the son has to say, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But like I said, the son's lost credibility when he started, saying his dad was the Zodiac killer as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know, guys. It's very sad. So, and yes, there are ties to downtown LA and Hollywood. People from other, states and even the world come to look at those places and take pictures and say, this is where her body was found, and it's kind of, I thought it'd be interesting to just talk about, the sadness of this whole case, how she was portrayed. For all we know, she could have been like the sweet person who fell in love with a married man, right? Married man lied to her. I don't know. Maybe she was like, I don't know. I'm just saying they're portraying her in the media back then as not the best type of woman. And I don't know. But yeah, well, this is our little conversation on the Black Dahlia. Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see what it'll definitely go on unsolved. And I'm sure, there's a lot of stuff out there, information. People are still fascinated by the story. And so if you guys are interested, all that is online and there are a lot of books. So yeah. Well, thank you for doing another episode, Leone.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yes. And I will have him more often, guys. Don't worry, okay? I'm not getting rid of him. as long as his time allows, because he's a very busy man.
Yeah, just give me 2 weeks notice, okay?
Yeah.
If you decide to get rid of me, just give me 2 weeks notice. I gotta find a new podcast to crash.
No, I'll have my people call your people. I'm just kidding.
I don't have people anymore. I'm myself, yo.
Oh. Yeah. So, all right. Well, thank you. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye. That was episode 61 of the Purposely Curious podcast. Make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on most podcast platforms, and follow us on social media at Purposely Curious on Instagram and at Purposely C Pod on Twitter. That's Purposely, the letter C, Pod. Until next time, you know what to do.